Welcome to the Public-Private Cyber Synergy, charting the future of secure financial inclusion. I'm Francesca Bosco. I'm a Chief Strategy Officer at the CyberPeace Institute, and it's a pleasure to be together with Michelle and Sandino. I will have the chance to introduce them a little bit later on to start our discussion. Amidst the rapid global digitalization, financial inclusion has emerged as a critical sector experiencing a transformative growth. This intersection of technology and finance aims to uplift lives, reduce inequalities, and also foster economic and societal growth. However, with such progress comes also inherent challenges. The widespread adoption of digital financial tools like mobile banking, for example, has inadvertently exposed millions to potential cyber threats. As the dependence on technology in the financial sector specifically grows, ensuring robust cybersecurity measures is not only pertinent but urgent, and especially when we think about low-income populations more at risk of being targeted and exposed. Recognizing that civil society organizations are particularly vulnerable to cyber attacks and often they lack the resources to strengthen their cybersecurity, the CyberPeace Institute was founded in 2019 in response to the escalating dangers posed by sophisticated cyber attacks. The Institute, I would say, overarching mission is to mitigate the adverse effects of cyber attacks on people's lives worldwide. To do this, from a practical standpoint, we have a flagship initiative that is called the CyberPeace Builders Program. Through this program, we provide free cybersecurity assistance to NGOs and nonprofit by connecting them with cybersecurity experts coming from the private sector. As of today, we have 656 volunteers from 44 companies that have provided hundreds of hours of free cybersecurity assistance to over 160 NGOs that are operating globally. We support NGOs with a large variety of missions, including organizations providing financial services to people in need. And we really believe that multi-sectoral partnership like this one are a sustainable solution to tackle cyber threats and their harmful consequences on NGOs and vulnerable communities. Today, as I mentioned, we have the pleasure to discuss the intersection between cybersecurity and the financial sector with two partners of ours, and really to highlight the relevance of cybersecurity in the financial sector, not only as a sort of like economic threat, but as a societal one. And on the other hand, how we can strengthen together the societal response via the ones that are more active, like nonprofit organizations. So I'm very pleased, and I really would like to thank our colleagues today. So we have today with us Sandino Scheidegger, is the founder of Social Income, a Switzerland-based nonprofit organization. Social Income provides unconditional cash transfers via mobile phones to individuals living in poverty in West Africa. Since its inception in 2020, the organization has implemented an ongoing universal basic income program in Sierra Leone, distributing more than 2,000 installments during the COVID-19 crisis. Recently, Social Income joined the CyberPeace Builders program, the one that I was mentioning before, to strengthen their cybersecurity and ensure that they can pursue their crucial mission. Besides his role as Social Income, Sandino is also a member of the scientific staff of the Swiss Federal Chancellery, and he is also co-founder of an art institution, Random Institute Réunion and Custale Tropical. So wide type of expertise, and I'm happy that he will talk about the direct experience of being part of the CyberPeace Builders program. On the other hand, thank you so much, Michelle, for being with us. Michelle McClure serves as the head of MasterCard Fusion Center. The MasterCard Fusion Center is a global, cross-functional, multi-department security preparation response hub. Under Michelle's leadership, the Fusion Center's team provide information on global threats, share intelligence, evaluate potential cybersecurity risk, and proactively implement security solutions for MasterCard and their partners. And again, I'm very happy because Michelle is one of many CyberPeace builders from Mastercard that volunteer some of their time to provide free cybersecurity support to nonprofit organizations. Before digging into the program and your direct basically experience with the program, I would like to start with Michelle to basically to set the stage for the conversation. So generally speaking, why is cybersecurity is such a crucial element in digital financial services? Michelle?
Yes, so the world in which we're living today looks very different than it did just even a few years ago. Technology is continuing to evolve. It's connecting the disconnected and making our lives more convenient. How people shop, pay, and interact is constantly changing. But as these interactions go digital, criminals follow. We're seeing an increase in cybercrime, and everyone is a target. National infrastructure, healthcare, governments, even nonprofits are all being targeted in cyber attacks. Cybersecurity is particularly crucial in digital financial services for several reasons. First is interconnectedness. A security breach, for example, in one institution or service can have cascading, rippling effects throughout the system. This leads to widespread disruption and loss. We are all part of the global commerce ecosystem, and security is all of our responsibility, regardless of location or size of your organization. And this includes micro and small sized organizations. Second is trust. People trust financial institutions with their sensitive information and personal data. Protecting this information from theft and breaches is critical to ensure people trust in the digital economy. The increasing use of online banking, digital wallets, and mobile payment systems make cybersecurity even more essential as people and transactions are brought online. And finally, economic stability and national security. The financial sector is the backbone of any economy. A major cybersecurity attack targeting digital financial services can destabilize the economic system, affecting businesses, governments, and individuals alike. And I see that the cybersecurity landscape evolving from a threat perspective in the financial sector with the emerging technologies that we're all seeing. There's rapid adoption of these new technologies such as blockchain, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence, and this introduces even newer vulnerabilities and attack vectors that threat actors will use against us. So again, cybersecurity is crucial to mitigate the risks associated with the use of these new technologies.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I really like also the point on the economic sector being at the backbone, and basically the talking about economic stability and about, I would say, societal one. I would ask Sandino, I mean, being very active, let's say, at the interconnection, I would say, with the nonprofit, the financial inclusion services, but also at the same time clearly understanding the societal impact of your work. How does cybersecurity help protect your mission at the social income? And have you experienced any attempted cyber attacks, for example, that have challenged or even impeded your work as the one that, for example, Michelle was mentioning before?
Well, we haven't been attacked yet, luckily, but of course we get those quite tricky phishing emails from time to time, and I think they're getting better and better. I think AI has something to do with it, but let's go back to the main question about cybersecurity and our mission. And I think, Michelle, you mentioned it. It's the key word here is trust. I mean, trust for NGO is our currency. In our case, we got the contributors on one side, generously donating funds, and they expect from us to keep their data, but also the money safe. Otherwise, they're just not donating anymore, and that's as simple as that. Then we stop existing. And the other side, we have our recipients, so the people living in poverty who rely on the basic income for 3 years. And they do share sensitive information with us, and given their vulnerable position, I think it's even more important to keep their data safe. So that's a bit the situation we find ourselves in. for us, it's not about fighting or fending off the high-profile attacks. That's not something which happens. It's we're also too small for this, but of course we can't rule out any of these attacks in the future. Our approach at the moment is to somehow minimize the risk something happens. I mean, we don't want to be in the position to say in the end when something happens, oh, we should have known. We actually did know, but we didn't do it. So I think that's a bit the approach at the moment. We keep our devices updated, two-factor authentication, we manage passwords, we do daily, even hourly backup of some data and things like that. It's just like the base to actually be safe as we can. Yeah, I think where I would like to also mention another point is that we're maybe a bit different from other organizations as we are on top of it open source, meaning all our code is out there to see for everyone. So on one hand, that means it has been crafted with the privacy and security in the back of the mind, but also that everyone can see the data. It also opens doors for other bad actors. And I think that's where we have another kind of a challenge, which we I think manage in a way that we have a good code review process, so we're sure to not have any malicious code in it. And so maybe that's it for now.
Thank you so much, and that's very interesting because I think you. Thanks for sharing basically your actual experience with the social income. You mentioned something that I mean, I would like then to turn the question to Michelle. You mentioned, for example, the fact that and it's true. It's also from our experience. You have, let's say, a very diverse level of maturity of the different NGOs that are part of the program, for example, and different level of maturity, I would say, both in being tech and cyber savvy. Since the program, the idea is to find a sustainable way by which we can partner with the different sectors according to the expertise that they can bring at the table and sustain each other. Going back to Michelle and coming from, let's say, a very expert standpoint, do you find any unique challenges when working, for example, with nonprofit and NGOs to increase, I would say, both the knowledge and awareness that, for example, in the case of Sandino situation is very high, and their cybersecurity capabilities?
Yes, absolutely. So working with nonprofits to increase their cybersecurity capabilities does present unique challenges, and maybe the more obvious one is limited resources. So nonprofits often operate with limited budgets for skilled cybersecurity staff and comprehensive IT infrastructure, and educating staff on security awareness, leading to phishing attacks or unsafe data practices. Nonprofits might not have well-established incident response plans, making it challenging to effectively respond to recover from any cybersecurity attacks that do occur. Another one that I think of is supply chain risks. So nonprofits may work with a variety of partners and vendors, which can introduce supply chain risks if these third parties do not have adequate cybersecurity measures in place. So addressing these challenges requires a combination of strategies, such as seeking funding specifically for cybersecurity, investing in staff training, collaborating with cybersecurity experts, and implementing risk management practices tailored to the specific context in which that NGO operates. So organizations like CyberPeace Builders allow cybersecurity experts who have the skill and the drive to help use their skills to fill the needs of these nonprofits. And these professionals can help with identifying the infrastructure that you have that's highest risk so that it can be prioritized, guiding you on how you can update your defenses by taking advantage of security updates, educating staff on phishing basics, easily implementing more complex passwords and multi-factor authentication, implementing least privilege, and ultimately making the threat actor's job harder. We don't want to make it easy for them. So nonprofits working in financial inclusion are likely also to handle sensitive financial data, potentially making them a more attractive target for cyber criminals. And this is because they handle sensitive financial information, which might attract more sophisticated and motivated attackers. So protecting this data is crucial to maintain trust and comply with regulations. Facilitating or managing financial transactions necessitates robust security measures to prevent fraud and ensure that integrity and confidentiality of transactions stays intact. And the beneficiaries of financial inclusion nonprofits might not always be digitally literate, so making them more vulnerable to scams and phishing attacks. And what I think is great is that there are resources to help financial inclusion nonprofits such as CyberPeace Institute, Global Cyber Alliance, and even MasterCard in providing no or low-cost education and solutions to keep your organization safe so that you can keep doing the great work that you do.
Thank you so much, Michelle, and thank you for mentioning existing resources. So we are presenting here, for example, one solution, but for example, even within the CyberPeace Builders program, we are collaborating with other different entities. And since you mentioned, for example, the Global Cyber Alliance, we're also part of one initiative that is called Nonprofit Cyber, by which we're putting together all the nonprofits that are working specifically on cybersecurity to basically support the civil society actors and to benefit society as a whole. It's very interesting that, and thank you so much also for detailing the importance of understanding the context where an NGO is operating in, because, for example, I mean, when working on financial inclusion and considering the digital transformation processes, the combination of the two elements might have very specific, let's say, consequences like the ones that you mentioned. You started with let's say, the key challenge that you have identified, which is, for example, the limited resources. And I know, coming from a civil society organization, that I definitely share, let's say, the feeling and the situation. As a nonprofit organization, we're always faced, I think, with the resource constraint. I would say, I mean, in terms of, like, you mentioned, for example, the having the proper, let's say, the proper profiles in-house and adequate the skills to manage certain specific areas like cybersecurity, and then clearly also the financial resources that were also mentioned before. Often this lack of resources combine with the lack of knowledge and awareness, simply because it might not be the focus, let's say, of the work, is kind of like a very dangerous combination. Sandino, how do you overcome basically these challenges as social income if you encounter this challenge as well?
Yeah, of course we know the constraints, and I think that's the NGO life. In our case, I think I could say it really is also about how you start. And in our case, we did have some help, and it was an in-kind donation or software for free from the big companies. We're part of the Google nonprofit program, or the GitHub open source program, or like the 1Password, things like that, helped us to at least start with a quite a safe setup. Because as we know from our own struggles with our own computer and updates and things like that, as soon as we get used to something, it's hard to change afterwards. I think it really is key with what kind of tools you start. And this discussion about the tooling is, I think, also very important, and we have to do it with all people involved, because at the end, if you choose a tool which nobody uses, then you're back to the first step. In our case, I think it helped to start with, for example, the Google Suite, where you can easily manage 20 to 30 accounts of volunteers or open source developers, even by a non-tech person. And I think that's something we would recommend to any other NGO which is about to start their new initiative. Not everyone is starting from scratch. But then we have to set, of course, the priorities. The mission should be still priority, in our case, fighting poverty. And then it's a balancing. Every day you have to take some decisions. And I think it's the most important is that you have the discussion within the team, amongst the community, because otherwise it's not, the information doesn't go to where it probably is the most likely entry point for any attack, and that's where you have the volunteers or people just out in the field. And yeah, in the end, it's a challenge for the industry. If the cyber industry takes the cyber risk seriously, I think they have a good motivation to help NGOs, because that's one way to have a big impact. With often it's a small amount, it's even software donations and things like that, which they can really have a big impact, and I think motivate everyone to go this line. There is a lot of offers out there, and I think also the CyberPeace Institute is something which is a bit unique, because they do a different kind of work, not only helping the NGOs directly, but also actually bringing people together to talk about things like that, like we do right now.
Thank you so much, Santino, for sharing. And I think maybe to close also with one reflection, I think it's very important that you mentioned the tools, and specifically some of the programs that are available, both in terms of like volunteering resources as like human beings, as the CyberPeace Builders program, but also specifically the tools. So you mentioned GitHub, Google.org, and I think where often there is a mismatch, and that's where maybe we can, let's say, advocate for the next step, is that to have more companies participating to discussion like this one, and especially engaging with the civil society, not just in terms of like consultation, but also co-design. Because one of the challenges that I can see from a nonprofit perspective is that often the tools are given pro bono, but they're not designed, let's say, with the specific need that you might have as a civil society organization, specifically working, for example, in developing countries and or in very sensitive settings, like I'm thinking, for example, conflict settings. So I think this is a good starting point, and I'm very happy to have you both here. But I think that also the next step might be how we can construct tools and services together for improving. I would like to thank our speakers for joining our session and for bringing their real life experience to constructively contribute to advance the awareness on the relevance of cybersecurity in the financial sector, specifically as a key enabler, basically, for inclusion and development. Thank you so much.
Thank you.